So 8 people have been charged in the district court with drug and money laundering offences in relation to the Drogheda Feud, which thankfully has abated, although is one of those things, like all feuds, that still bubbles a little bit under the surface, doesn't it? And it only takes one or two things to happen.
Absolutely, it does. Obviously, some of the main players are dead, like, effectively. So that certainly, because it's quite a localised feud, although there was involvement in people from Dublin and from around other parts of Leinster, some of the people who drove the violence, in particular Cornelius Price and Robbie Lawler, have died. And that certainly we've seen other people leave the country. Obviously, some people have been convicted as well, some of the major players. But what you have now is people that have been involved or have been accused, at least, of the facilitation, really, of these criminal organisations have come before the courts, charged with money laundering offences primarily. Kind of unusually, I suppose, it was 7 women and 1 man.
Yeah.
So normally not the normal gender balance for these types of things, I think.
No, it is very heavily weighed on the women when it comes to the money laundering charges that have been levelled against them. And this is district court. There is a possibility, obviously, that these charges or these people might make their way up into the higher courts. But for the moment, they are before the district court. I suppose to talk about it a little bit broader, the investigation into Drogheda and all that went on continues. I mean, there's still activity around the murder of Keane Mulready Woods, still an ongoing investigation into anybody else been involved in that. Obviously, Robbie Lawler was named by Justice Tony Hunt as being the one who directed and who killed the teenager. At the time, Lawler was totally and utterly out of control, and he was later himself murdered in Belfast. And you and I are actually going to talk about this in some detail.
Yeah.
Because I have written a book about it, well, centred on, I suppose, the Drogheda Feud and, centred on this sort of these new breed of gangs and gang warfare that has kind of come since, I suppose, the demise of the Kinahan.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting couple of things to it. I mean, Drogheda is, it's still regarded as a rural town. It's not a city. It's not, a centre like Dublin where you're going to have a lot of, huge population. But despite its size, it was capable of igniting a feud that caused a number of very serious murders and, I suppose, dragged in a whole range of young people into a high level of gun violence. And there was a huge amount of violence that wasn't ultimately lethal that surrounded it. I mean, I think the statistics for some of the pipe and petrol bombings were quite stunning, like the amount of it that was going on.
And it's interesting actually when you look at it, because as it sort of built, that's what it was. It was petrol bombings, it was pipe bombs. It was this sort of low-level criminality nearly, or something that we dismiss, spray painting of walls, damage to properties, this kind of thing that you sort of like, when you're covering organised crime, you kind of go, oh, what is that? Dismiss it. And in actual fact, it built up into pretty much one of the worst feuds that we've seen outside Dublin.
Exactly, considering as well it is still a relatively small population, so it really had a massive impact. I actually remember when it was starting off and you'd see things on social media, and one of the great insults that they would call each other is, you're just a window smasher.
Right, yeah.
So, you just drive past or walk past and throw something in somebody's window, like you're not the real deal. And they were young people involved. The leaders of one of the factions were guys in their early 20s at the time. Now, on the other side, there was the Maguire Price faction, who were, certainly Cornelius Price was one of... as hardened a criminal as you could get at this stage. I think it was a model for the dangers that Ireland will face over the next number of years as the rural drug crime has exploded. The level of weapons, the connections between these criminal organisations are really, they're national networks now in a way that they weren't before. And the fact is that there are firearms available on the streets for people who have money. And also the cocaine trade gives people access to huge resources because of the huge profits that are to be made. 20 years ago, the level of profit to be made out of, say, selling something like cannabis was significant, but cocaine can turn people into something like millionaires very, very quickly.
Yeah, and like even, you know, in the small town, I mean, some of the raids, the Criminal Assets Bureau seized, you know, hundreds of thousands of euro, but not like millions, but 200,000 euro. I mean, that would have been unheard of for a drug gang to be able to accumulate that over a short space of time.
100%.
And also the fact that they went to war was largely due to personalities, but also due to the money that could be made. I mean, it was worth killing for, both sides believed. But for the moment, we'll leave it at that, just to say that these people are before the courts, and we'll follow that as they meander their way through the system. And we'll be back early next week to talk about Web of Betrayal.
Web of Betrayal, yeah. But look, I mean, it's a fascinating murder, obviously the murder of Robbie Lawler, because I suppose, given the nature of modern investigations, which involves a lot of phone evidence, you can just see these connections, and it's such a web of betrayal.
And I'll get you a book before. I will actually promise I'll get you a book before you talk to me, because I should have a box of them, hopefully at home by the time I get home, and I will definitely be one with your name on it.
Okay.
So you're up to speed before we
grill you
about it.
I'll grill you on your
grilled. Okay, right. Thanks, Niall.
Thanks, Nicola.
I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.